Thank you to School of Visual Arts and SVA Theater. My name is Natalie Zane, and I'm the symposium coordinator, but usually I'm the in-house art historian at Contemporary Conservation. I learned so much from our conservators, for whom the necessity of literally looking at artworks in different lights is intrinsic to their training and practice. I want to acknowledge everyone at the studio for their insightful and nuanced discussions that shaped this symposium, and for their diverse talents and hard work that helped put it together, and all while keeping the studio going. So amazing. In the realm of contemporary art, not only do we have the beautiful challenge of concept and context-dependent artworks, as well as a crazy inventory of artistic materials, but we are ourselves occupying the same historical era, a collision of contemporary and historical, maybe, or the sense of working with art and history in real time. What does it mean, then, to keep a body of work alive and vital when the artist is no longer here to speak for it? How do we make decisions about this? In at least one vital aspect, the mandate of artists' estates and conservation is the same. As Jeff just said, to preserve and uphold the integrity of an artist's body of work in its material and its discursive manifestations, so that future generations can experience it. So body of work grew out of the first crack, as Jeff mentioned, a symposium that Contemporary Conservation organized in 2015, and in particular, the last panel on artists' estates. That discussion and the many that followed it, amongst ourselves with the studio, with conservator colleagues, museums, artists, artists' estates, curators, gallerists, was really the impetus for this forum. The topic of artists' estates, legacy, and the market is indeed expanding, and we saw an opportunity to bring estates and conservation and all art workers involved in some way in this field into a dialogue like body of work. It is now with pleasure that I introduce Christian Scheidemann, Principal of Contemporary Conservation, my boss, and the mastermind of this symposium on all levels of planning. Christian came to New York and founded Contemporary Conservation in 2002 after having practiced conservation in Hamburg since 1980. One of the things that makes working at the studio so rich is Christian's long-term working relationships with artists, many of whom he had actually already met before coming to the States. For example, the Zoe Leonard show, which is on right now at the Whitney Museum, presents Leonard's Strange Fruits. Over 20 years ago, Christian and Zoe were 2 years in correspondence and experimentation over its conservation, and also the evolving intention and meaning of the work. So for Christian, the central concern, the artwork, includes the concept and context by which it was formed with the artist, and its path from its origin to its becoming historical. So in his talk today, he is going to elaborate on the life of the artwork as it enters a new phase of existence, beyond the life of the artist. Please welcome Christian. Thank you.
Very kind. And I just want to mention regarding crazy materials, what you have on your program is, we forgot to mention, this is a new material invented by Jason Rhodes in 2002, and it's called Pyrofoam, and we just forgot to mention the name and also credit the estate of Jason Rhodes, Rachel Kadori. We are very grateful that we can use this image, and I think it's appropriate because it is actually very stable material, and but we can speak about this a little later. In recent years, there have been a number of conferences, workshops, and symposia on artist estates and foundation, mostly addressing legal matters, legacy building, or often over-taxation of artworks left in the estate after the artist has deceased. This symposium is different. The idea grew out of the fact that there is already a growing number of contemporary art in the world without the artist who made the work. And soon, or in particularly sad cases, and already now, without their former assistants, spouses, or collaborators. The number of contemporary artist estates has increased over the past decade and will eventually increase dramatically over the next generation. To run an artist estate or foundation is a big responsibility and not only an honor. Most people who are in this position did not apply for the job. It just came to them by default, either as part of the family or as former assistant, close confidant, or scholar. Heirs and representatives of artist estates own the authority over the artist's body of work, over their archive, ephemera, and copyrights. They have their voice in curatorial decisions and publications, and in broad decisions on replication, reinstallation, and conservation. Contemporary art is different from modern and traditional art in the way that not only the choice of material and fabrication is often unusual and experimental, or as we say, non-traditional, and sometimes not very stable or meant to be stable, but also the strategies and concepts are contextual and often highly charged with reference and meaning. It becomes even more complicated once one considers the artist's intention towards the work, or even more complicated, the changing intentions. What would the artist say? What would he or she have done differently? During these 2 days, we would like to examine how the integrity of artists' body of work can be maintained, who is making the decisions in conservation, and what informs these important decisions. How can artist estates benefit from the latest development in conservation technology and research? And last but not least, how much aging is acceptable in an ever-demanding and vibrant art market? Our studio is very fortunate to have worked closely with several estates, and we have greatly benefited from the deep knowledge and archival material that is kept in the holdings of the estate. We made a little drawing just to show everybody what we are meaning and why we are here together. Unfortunately, I don't have a pointer, but I think it will be okay. So you see like some of the concerns that the artist has to deal with. So in the middle, you see the artist in a studio with his assistant or her assistants. You see copyright fabrication with outside fabrication. I think Francesca and Jeffrey will also speak about this concept of outside fabrication. The material, of course, installation, creativity, intention, concept, the attitude. With the attitude, I think that's a very important thing to introduce here, which is perfection versus sloppiness. That's something that is very persistent and very important. So you cannot make something more beautiful than the artist has already done it. And I think we will speak about this too. And then of course the body of work. And then the next one would be, so you see the artist is gone, but there are still all these responsibilities towards the work. And the artwork turns into a historical object. I mean, it's all very simplified. Sometimes the fabricator goes more towards the estate, which is wonderful, former assistant, state representatives, and then there is a conservator who can greatly, just from looking at the work and examining the artwork very closely, can help the estate to understand what the artist had actually done. And so we are very, very much ingrained in the process of making the artworks, and of course we go to many artist studios, so we have a lot of insight in how the work is being done. So I think like one point that I want to make here is that it would be wonderful if conservation and artist estate could share information to the benefit of the legacy of the artist. And then there's like a slight difference where I want to mention the intentionality that comes from the artist and the attentionality that comes from the estate. And intentionality is often charged with the future, like looking into the future, like what did the artist mean, what was the idea behind the work. And then we have to be realistic that the estate, the conservators, galleries, everybody else has not only the intentionality but also the attentionality, which means some expectations towards the artwork. So how should it look? Like how there's, and the attentionality is something that is more charged with memory, like how did it look in the past? And so I just want to mention that there's not only the intention, but there's also the attention that comes towards the work, and we are all not free of it, but we just have to realize that there is a movement coming from everybody who's dealing with the afterlife of the artwork. And then we just wrote down questions that come up about the artwork, which is not complete, but for instance, the economy, like is this a cheap material? Is this an expensive material? How can we make sure that that Robert Rauschenberg is remembered for the time when he didn't have money? You know, like if he would say, if we would say now we have all the money, we can digitalize all these artworks, and then we usually say no, let's leave it analog because that's how that's the economical situation the work was made in. Then historicity is something that the work brings with itself. So we want to make the work have its own history. That means historicity, and historical context is the reference that the work expresses. And there are other things, of course. There are always this paint system. It's not just enough if we hear, oh, Solowit painted like he wanted everything to be white. So there's so many white colors and white paint systems, and you can make so much wrong if you just use white. And when the show comes together, it's so we are actually equipped with our scientific background to understand what kind of white was it, and so we go almost like archaeologically. We dig into the first layers and find out. I mean, it sounds crazy about contemporary art, but it has become archaeological. Okay, so now just to explain what can go wrong, I want to show two examples by Joseph Beuys, and this one is the last multiple that he did, Capri Battery, in 1985, and it exists in 200 editions and a few extra editions. And the idea behind this is that all energy comes from nature, and it's actually a physiochemical. It's a very old knowledge that from lemon with copper and zinc you can create energy, and that's what he meant when he did this little thing. And in many museums, including this, in this example, you can see, like at the tip of the lemon, that someone actually made a silicone model of a lemon. And this is so wrong. And it looks so right, but it's actually very wrong. And because the idea of Joseph Beuys is not something to look like something, but it's actually the process. And I think this is something that we are very strongly dealing with, and that's why we always think that conservation is not just a craftsmanship, but it's also like very intellectual, and even to look at the material can be an intellectual exercise. So the idea was to have a lemon, like a real lemon, be there for 1,000 hours, which is approximately 6 weeks, and then it should be exchanged. It's quite messy because lemons usually don't last very long, but that's exactly what he was talking about, like going into the institutions, finding someone who really takes care of the artworks, and I think that's what we would like to promote. And we don't have to go very far. On 22nd Street there's this installation, and you can see in this little drawing by Joseph Beuys that the idea of the 7,000 Oak project, which was started in 1982 to 87, he wanted the basalt and the basalt as a metaphor for our history, and the tree as a metaphor for life and prosperity, ultimately grow together. And on the right side you see the original, like the first tree that he planted in front of the Fridericianum in Kassel, and then on 22nd Street you see how they were planted here, and there's no way that they can ever grow together. So again, it looks very, it looks like Beuys, but it's not Beuys. And again, this is something that is ingrained deeply in the concept of Beuys's work. So yeah, I want to basically thank Jeff Neeson and the School of Visual Arts for hosting our second symposium here. It's a great privilege. This theater is amazing, and it's very intimate and very concentrated, and I feel very honored that you trust our studio to set up another conference, and I want to thank the SVA theater staff, Vincent and Brian, Joe, Jess, Vidya, and Amanda, and probably many more people. It has been a wonderful preparation time. It all is very smooth. They're highly professional, and it was a really joy to work together. We are very grateful for intellectual and financial support from Glenstone Museum, the main sponsor for this event. Emily and Mitch Rails were enthusiastic from the beginning about the topic of this event, not only but also because Glenstone has a great number of works from deceased contemporary artists in their collection. Further generous support came from art agency partners, a distinguished art advisory agency with a strong interest in the developing and support of artists' estates. We are very thankful also to Jill Krause and Peter Krause, and to Anna-Marie Shapiro and Robert Shapiro for their uncomplicated and very generous support. It means a lot to us. I would like to thank all speakers for their enthusiasm in participating in this event, and I must say everybody who you will see today and tomorrow have been our dream speakers, and we thought, oh, maybe we won't get them. But everybody has agreed, and it's really wonderful that everybody has had interest in this event and in this topic. It is not usual for a private conservation studio to organize such a comprehensive event, and it would not be possible without a strong team. First of all, I want to thank Ilana Hester, our invaluable studio manager, for her precision, oversight, and good energy in the planning. Our conservators, Sarah Cardinianos, Christine Fröner, Mareike Peña, Juliana Moretto, Delia Müller-Wüsten, and our intern, Serena Finn, for their immense support in discussing the individual topics and contributing from their experience in dealing with artist estates. Special thanks also to Yui Hasegawa for his consistent technical support within his studio. And now, Natalie. Natalie, as she said herself, she has been working for us for 4 years now, and it has been like an utmost pleasure and great inspiration to work with you. And we have done a lot of things together and discussed a lot of things. And I think Natalie was also very inspiring for all of our team. She always brought new ideas in, and she organized all our thoughts. And Natalie worked with me on this symposium and on the concept, and it was, and also she engineered the title body of work. That was her idea, because we needed something to grip on. And yeah, I can't thank you enough, and it's wonderful to work with you, and I want to thank everybody for coming, and have a wonderful event.